Father, how can a Catholic approach dating a non-Catholic, whether Protestant or even someone with no faith, while staying true to their beliefs? How can one effectively introduce their partner to Catholicism without being overbearing, while also setting firm spiritual boundaries to protect their own faith and values?
Well, I think in this case, someone has to be a good Catholic. If they live their Catholic life the way they should, then the person they're dating will be clear on that. Will know this is a Catholic, and this is a real Catholic, and he or she takes their faith seriously. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the Catholic should not tell the other person, look, if we're going to have an ongoing relationship here, it can only be if you respect my faith, because you respect me, and that you are willing to consider whether my faith is true. And if you're not willing to consider that, this is a non-starter. We can be friends, but we're not going to have any romantic relationship. We have no future in that regard. So we can say hello to each other and, maybe belong to a bowling team together or something. But as far as any possible romance going forward, that's completely off the table. And somebody has to see, if a person is not willing to say, well, all right, yes, I'm open to that. I'm open to the possibility that your faith is a true faith, and to learn about it, to understand it. And, you could even make it clear to them from the beginning, now look, whether or not you become Catholic, I personally am not going to marry anybody who's not a Catholic. I've made that resolution, and I'm going to keep it. So, I'm saying that not to pressure you to becoming a Catholic, because I'm also telling you at the same time, you must never become Catholic for my sake. You must become Catholic for your sake and for God's sake, because you believe it's the right thing. If I thought you were becoming Catholic for my sake, I would cut it off immediately, because that's totally contrary to my belief. You have to become Catholic for God's sake. So if you're willing to look into this possibility and to determine whether or not it is God's will, then we can move forward. As long as you know from the outset, what my intentions are. And one can put that in a way much more gently than I'm putting it now, of course. One doesn't have to say, okay, buddy, these are the rules. But one can express this to them in a kind, thoughtful, Catholic way, that these are my convictions, and I'm going to live true to them, because no matter, who I wind up marrying, I must, and they must understand that I must love God most. My first love is God. And I think they should make that statement going forward. My first love will be, and always will be, God. That's my intention now. And I will never sacrifice that love for the love of anyone else. Yeah. And so I'm just telling you where I'm starting here. If you're not open to that, then there's no future romance possible. Now, having said that, then the person has to live accordingly. It's not that they're always lecturing. It's not that they're always, leading the other one through the catechism page by page and so on. But they're living their faith. And it comes, you might say, supernaturally natural to them, in the sense that they've embraced this. These are the principles they live by. So it's just the way that's who they are and the way they live. And they live their faith. And the other person is going to learn from that. And ultimately, then you'd like the other person to think, well, I see what you're doing. I see how you live. I've met your family. I'm very impressed by them. I can see that your faith is a very practical faith and has some very practical consequences. What you and I know as the fruits of the Holy Ghost in the life of the person they're dating. And if someone sees the fruits of the Holy Ghost in their life, the life of someone they're interested in, that's very, very attractive in its own right. And hopefully that would lead them on to say, well, I want to learn more about this. I want to learn more about this. So you don't have to strong arm them into saying, well, we're going to catechism class. They would respond to that, hopefully, just because of the example given, the prayers that are being offered and sacrifices that are being made for that soul. You put yourself in the place of a Catholic, you know. And the Catholic is thinking, well, I'm looking for a spouse, ultimately. This is what the dating is all about. Romance is all about. Finding a spouse, making the marriage vows, having the marriage bond, and living a married life in service of God. This is what it's all about. So the Catholic boy or girl, I shouldn't say that, man or woman, because heaven forbid they're just boys and girls. They're grown-ups. They're men and women. Will think, okay, I'm thinking in terms of this person. And if this person is ultimately going to be a spouse of mine, I've got to get used to the idea that I love this person, body and soul, as a person. I want their salvation. That's the most important thing to me. Love wants the good of the other. And the greatest good that I can want for this other person is the salvation of their soul. So I have to now, even now, be willing to pray for them, be willing to pray with them, if they will. I have to sacrifice for them, and I will. And I have to set the best example I can for them. That's my job. If they respond to it positively, then this answers my question. If they don't respond to it positively, that answers my question also. And I just need the answer. Is this a viable relationship, or is it not? But it's a relationship that has to be blessed by God, not cursed by God, because it offends him and is an occasion of sin. I cannot allow that. I want my relationship to be blessed by God. And that means that the graces have to be, I have to be doing whatever I can to obtain the graces for this man or this woman. I have to secure their good. I have to love them body and soul.